Ladies and gentlemen, it's wonderful to have you here this morning and on the topic Reshaping Business for the Fourth Industrial Revolution and Beyond. It's a fascinating topic and it's a very relevant one, especially if you're in business. You would know that we've gone through a lot and I'm sure that we still need to go through a lot to move into the future. On behalf of the Northwest University, welcome, and also from the side of Telit SA, one of the research entities we have at the Northwest University, I would like to welcome you. We have three experts here this morning to address you on this issue and to share their insights and thoughts. They're all associated with Telit SA. Telit SA, let me do it this way. We'll get the director to tell you a little bit more. Verona Leendert is the director of Telit SA. Verona, it's wonderful to have you here. Tell us a little bit more, first of all, I think about the research entity, but then also about some of the projects you have running. I know you have a short learning program that you'd like to tell us about. You're working on a postgraduate diploma as well. Tell us a little bit more about the work that you do.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this webinar on behalf of Telit SA. I would like to welcome all of you today. I would share my presentation and I will talk you through what we have to offer at Telit SA and also what we envision for the future in Telit SA. So I will just share my screen. Okay, so in terms of how we are aiming to respond to the transformation and how businesses and the whole organizational space has to amend to adapt to this new changing space, I'm going to share today about how we in the unit actually are focusing on responding to the needs in this global society. Okay, so if we look at the changing perspectives from the industrial era had a significant focus on labor and capital, and then the knowledge era came into space where the focus was more strongly on information sharing. But now we're moving into the post-knowledge space where we actually have to focus on the action and conviction and what we need to do into the broader society within the businesses and the organizations to adapt to this space. If we look at recent research that was conducted, that they say that 14% of all jobs in future will be automated, and then 32% of jobs will be partially automated. So as we know, the technologies are developing faster, and we must ensure that we adapt to these technology systems within our space so that they can function efficiently. And we are aware that there's an ongoing, race between technology and information. And we have to make sure that within businesses, within the organization, and us within the higher education space where we offer programs, must make sure that we adapt our thinking and what we offer as well to this changing space. So how are we going to prepare for this fourth industrial revolution and beyond? And we are already moving into the fifth industrial revolution. So what we need to do is entrepreneurs, businesses have to embrace these technologies, and we have to empower ourselves to be significant and still abreast with all these changes that takes place. A recent worldwide survey that was conducted actually indicated that the majority of consumers and companies believe that these digital businesses are the way in which the future will unfold. And as we can already see what is happening if we look at the 3D printing. They're even printing houses in 3D now. Augmented reality, mixed reality, virtual reality, automation. This is really the space that we are moving into. And we are in the fourth industrial revolution, but we are emerging into the fifth industrial revolution. So they have to be in businesses a stronger focus and a shift, not just for technology integration, but actually the fusion of man and machine, because it's no more just about integrating the technology, adapting the technology, but really technology and man must work, in synergy, actually to respond to the needs in the broader society. So it's important that businesses have these capabilities and they respond to this changing space. If we're not going to respond to this changing space, then our businesses will not be able to be sustainable. So the latest full medium into
We seem to have some technical difficulties in the connection. You are most probably aware of this in your environment. I tell you, in the recent developments and the way in which we go about and doing our business and connecting with people, this often happens. We'll try to sort it out on our side. Let me just ask Verona, can you hear us now? You broke up a little bit. And nothing.
Yes,
no.
I didn't have any receiver.
Hello. All right. No, we'll try to get hold of Verona again a little bit later, and we remember that she is on the latest trends of the Chief Technology Officer slide. So we'll get to Verona a little bit later on. Now, Verona, as you can see, is quite informed about what we're talking about nowadays. And also here in this webinar. But another lady associated with Telet SA is Leonie Greyling. Now, Leonie, with a background in business, she has an MBA, and she's also involved at the NWU's enterprise development. She's going to talk to us a little bit about entrepreneurship within this post-pandemic environment that we sit in. And Leonie, I'm looking forward to your presentation. I'm worried and concerned about what we see in small and medium and micro-sized enterprises, the challenges that we are experiencing in accepting new innovations and the affordability thereof, etc., etc. Leonie, over to you. Tell us a little bit more.
So indeed, there is very good reason to be concerned. But on the other hand, we're also together in a time when we are actually making history, not only with a global pandemic, which has really shook our world, but also the fourth industrial revolution, and indeed even the onset of the fifth industrial revolution, which is truly changing the way that we are. So yes, let me have a talk to you a little bit about post-pandemic entrepreneurship. And the big question, I imagine, for entrepreneurs is where to now? What would possibly be my next steps? So we have all felt the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic with the lockdown and travel restrictions, loss of lives, etc. But really, smaller businesses are no exception. They really have been absolutely devastated by the impact of COVID-19, and even more so, women who have been very disproportionately affected by COVID-19, particularly because they tend to operate in sectors that were most impacted. So if we think about retail and hospitality, those sectors were really, really badly affected, and in fact still continue to do so to a large degree, whilst they also needed to take on unpaid childcare, at least for a period. So truly, small businesses had an incredibly hard time. can get my computer to move along, then we can move to the next slide. There we go. Okay, so if we have a little bit of a look in terms of business performance, so this was a survey that was conducted by Ipsos, so it's a multinational market research and consulting firm. So they actually conducted this survey in September last year, when really we were not even halfway to the point where we are now. So when it says after lockdown on our slide there, it actually means at September 2020. So I'm pretty sure the scenario is even more bleak at the moment. So if we have a look at business performance, the way that companies perceive their performance before lockdown versus after lockdown. So just to give you a bit of an orientation, before lockdown, the companies that really felt that they were doing quite well in terms of business performance, 69%, so that's the dark blue bands, and that's our overall number, versus only 12% that felt that they were not doing as well. That scenario has changed completely as a result of the pandemic. So now we have 63%, sorry, of businesses that feel that they are not performing well, with only 19% overall that feel that they're doing quite well. So, and if then we drill down a little bit further into the different tiers of businesses, so if we have a look at micro, small, and medium enterprises, then we'll see that they've really felt the brunt of COVID-19, with an absolutely overwhelming majority of them having had a very adverse effect because of the pandemic. Probably largely also, apart from the pandemic, that because of their smaller size, they have less capacity and resources to actually manage unexpected situations, especially something as long in duration as the pandemic and the lockdown situations. So what Plato also said is entirely true, that necessity is the mother of invention. So what we saw is that the crisis actually sparked a wave of innovation. So if we think about people working remotely, we think about remote education, there's been quite a bit of supply chain reinvention, repurposing of physical locations, business model reengineering, biopharmaceuticals, and those are just to mention a few. And with that came a tremendous growth in digitization, specifically, and I think every single person that would regularly, do any kind of shopping, for instance, or any kind of interaction with other individuals, needed to move to e-commerce and online customer services. And these are things that are likely to stay even after lockdown, because we've kind of gotten used to a new way of doing things. Then with that, there are things like artificial intelligence, machine learning to improve operations, telehealth, etc. So in fact, what we are really saying is that disruption actually creates a space for entrepreneurs. So here, if we think about the fourth industrial revolution that's leading into the fifth industrial revolution specifically, and new events that came onto our horizons and so on, the digital economy, the gig economy, digital health, regenerative medicine, synthetic agriculture, those are all spaces that really offer very exciting opportunities for entrepreneurs. And then, of course, the fact that talent has actually moved beyond our physical borders, where you can access talent literally from anywhere in the world, as opposed to just being restricted to your current location. So if we have a little bit of a look then in terms of how could entrepreneurs prepare for post-pandemic entrepreneurship. And this would be true for whether you are an entrepreneur that used to operate and the pandemic had an adverse effect on you, or whether you actually want to enter the market as a new entrepreneur. So probably one of the first questions that people would ask is that how could I possibly go about actually preparing for post-pandemic entrepreneurship? So the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, they've actually presented us with a fairly simple 7-step process just to kind of delineate for us what the things are that entrepreneurs could do. So obviously, one of the first things is take immediate action if you haven't yet done so. If you were an entrepreneur or you continue to be one, don't wait until after the lockdown, because who knows how long that is going to happen. And obviously, the impact becomes more severe and you really need to actually start pivoting if you haven't done so. Then prepare for recovery, then really take stock, do an owner's assessment, make sure that you have a concrete recovery plan with tactics in place that you can implement, and those could be in a phased approach. Make sure that your finance and your funding is in place. And then obviously, hopefully, if you've done all of your work well and the scenario plays along, you could reopen. So possibly the next question that entrepreneurs could ask is, but if I need support in terms of repositioning myself to enter the market again, where could I get support? Because as I said, larger entities have much more resources, they have much more capacity and so on than our smaller enterprises. So our smaller enterprises need much more support than our larger entities. So of course, there are many opportunities for entrepreneurs to get support. There are many initiatives. One of those is the Noordwes-Universitei's Beehive Enterprise Development Center. So it is specifically geared to provide support to entrepreneurs, and we do so in 3 different pillars. So first of all, female entrepreneurs, student entrepreneurs, and then community entrepreneurs. So it kind of covers all of the bases of the types of entrepreneurs one might come across. And those could be for-profit, social entrepreneurs, not-for-profit, etc. It really does not play a role in the nature of the support that you can get. And the support, just to give you a little bit of an idea, that we could offer is we've got multiple programs and initiatives, networking opportunities, physical infrastructure, etc. And of course, a network of skilled people that we could tap into to provide support where we feel that we are unable to really give you the best support that you need. I suppose the message that I want to leave everybody with is that SMMEs are the backbone of any society for job creation and economic contribution. So they really are our pathfinders during the journey to economic recovery. And if we take this scenario in terms of economic recovery together with the 4th Industrial Revolution, and as Verona said, the 5th Industrial Revolution that is on the horizon, if we take all of that into context, there is tremendous opportunities for entrepreneurs to really make a difference and to really play their part. So although we are living in challenging times, as I said, there are tremendous opportunities for entrepreneurs, and they really can play a pivotal role in what we could possibly term as our next normal, by really grabbing the 4th Industrial Revolution by the horns. So I am quite excited for entrepreneurship and for this new world that we're living in, to see where it goes. It's definitely not all doom and gloom. There is quite a bit that can be done and should be done. So just to close off, for those people that might want to contact us, as I mentioned, the 3 different pillars are entrepreneurs. So the Enterprising Women Program, that's specifically meant for females. You can contact me. Community entrepreneurs, there our lead is Johan Landsberg. And then our student entrepreneurs, Annelies Steenkamp. So as with although we have a broad spectrum of support, it's very well defined because these types of entrepreneurs all have different needs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leonie. Really appreciate your contribution. Thank you for being here with us. You've raised some issues and a few concerns, and we'll explore those concerns a little bit later on again when we engage in our discussion. Now, Leonie started us off and with a strong focus on SMMEs and getting your business going. I'd like to return to Verona. Verona, are you with us now?
Yes, Gippe, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, Verona, we can hear you clearly. All right, but we'd
I'm really
like to
sorry
hear
about
of
that.
you.
Hey, I have so multiple devices here, with the hotspot and everything, but sometimes the internet just drops us.
Hey, it's technology, what can you say? All right, but we'd like to get back to your presentation. Yes.
Okay, yes, and as Leonie said, businesses and entrepreneurs have to actually amend and adjust and, move into this new space. What we aim to do is actually equip, businesses, managers of small, medium enterprises with these necessary skills so that they will be able to, function within this new digital space that's coming along. And what we aim to do with our qualifications that we are developing, and one that's starting, the SLP that's starting in the beginning of 2022, is that we want to actually equip businesses, and particularly our small, medium, and micro enterprises, with these necessary digital skills to actually function and survive in this changing business world. If we, because many of our big game players, our APSs, our PWCs, they have the support systems and structures in place. But, for our small and medium enterprises, there's not really people that really focus and market, and actually equip those enterprises with the necessary skills to, to survive in this ongoing changing environment. This SLP that we are developing, and that is actually ready for execution, is where we focus, it's for managers of small and medium enterprises and micro, also for startup entrepreneurs, and also for employees within these, small and medium enterprises. So what does the content of this SLP include? At the end of the day, the participants will work, will walk out with a portfolio of evidence where they're actually going to develop a whole digital ecosystem. There's 8 modules in total of this SLP. So they will do Internet of Things. They will look at, in the business environment, augmented and virtual reality, data mining, cloud computing, automation. Also, design is actually how you market and position your enterprise, for this global and internet market. And also looking at how does digital transformation in Africa look like, and how your ecosystem have to look at the end of the day. So this is, in total 8 modules. The SLP will, the requirements is on NQF level 8 equivalent or master's degree, and some fundamental knowledge on the core modules, also work experience in this field. As many of the participants already might work in this field, they do have exposure to what is happening in the companies. And then what we will do, we will upskill these digital skills for these participants. So if anyone that's interested in this SLP must contact us at Tell It SA. We do have a website, but this is our email address. In future soon, we will have a full qualification, a PG DIP in digital commerce and digital innovation, that we are also in the process of developing. So this is some of the things we are working on and offering to how we can respond to this changing landscape. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Verona. I'm fascinated by the short learning program. I think it offers quite a wide array of product and training options. I'm still concerned about the small to medium size enterprises and how, often they are so driven towards results and getting things going and still surviving. I'm thinking, how can we better entice them to move forward in terms of their general knowledge, their business knowledge, and then also their knowledge specifically to the world of technology. And I think that's why it's so opportune now to move to Terence Kumal. Now, Terence Kumal is an extraordinary professor at Tell It SA. He's focusing on the practice of business but he has a wealth of experience. He has a few ideas on how to get results in this post-pandemic environment. Terence, thank you so much for joining us, and we'd like to hear more from you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, GP. I think the learning programs and the academic innovations are indeed fascinating because of where we find ourselves at an accelerated pace post-pandemic. But to move into the presentation, and I'm going to apologize in advance, this is a 45-minute presentation that I'm going to try and squeeze into a lot shorter period at this time. So to me, before we get into some of the nuts and bolts of what the 3 R's of entrepreneurship are, where innovation and technology can fit in, maybe a little bit of the backstory. I am associated as a professor of practice at the institution, and I run a range of businesses, both in healthcare, investments, and other fields. But simply put, when it comes to innovation, business, and success, money talks and wealth whispers, because all too often we find ourselves in South Africa and internationally, where the moment somebody has a small measure of success, it is then almost flaunted to say we're making money, as opposed to building legacy and sustainable systems. Where do I plug into this world? I can tell you we've come from nothing. Literally, that little car reminds me of the car we had when we grew up. I studied on scholarships as we had no funding for accommodation to pay for fees and university studies. I was invited then at Tux at the illustrious Sonop residence and turned it down because I didn't have fees. So I joined the military because they had one of the best opportunities to study and move forward. But how does that tie into entrepreneurship? Well, when you have zero resources and the only direction you can look is up, then I made a promise to my mom back then saying, in 10 years, we will live a lifestyle where we may not have to look at prices again, but also be responsible with what we do as we gain success. It was an illustrious dream. It was a mad idea with an 18-year-old just imagining what could be and what's possible. And in terms of the business world, I started my first business in 2000 and formally registered my first business in 2003. For those of us who remember, revenue stamps were the rage. So that is at a time when innovation was slightly less prevalent than where it is today. In terms of talking about business, there's a massive difference between theorizing on how business should work and how entrepreneurship and innovation works versus somebody who actually has been down the road. And that, I think, is what we need in terms of mentorship, coaching, and support in tandem with the academic training programs which TLSA and the institution is offering. In terms of practitioner, over the last 11 years, we've built a healthcare management system, or a platform business, as it's properly called these days. And we were averaging pre-COVID in excess of 2 billion Rand per annum, claims management, no debt financing, no revenue generated because of investor funding, and 100% equity. And that's important because a lot of young entrepreneurs and established businesses have started to feel the pressure of venture capital, private equity, and others, where success is only measured on what you've raised, not what you've generated and created in terms of value as a business. As a lifelong learner since 2001, I've always had a student number. I'm registered at some institution or the other, because the speed and pace at which education, technology, and innovation is moving, one has to keep pace. But to move quickly into the first I, which I define as integrity, when you're in business and you're looking at what is the impact of technology and innovation and changes, the first change and the first perspective you need to reflect on is, why am I doing this? Why am I involved in this business initiative? Why do we persist in what we do? And what is our purpose in doing this? Or what is my purpose as an individual for doing this? Then looking at the external environment of, what do I do within my business, my friends, my family, and my direct circle of influence? Why am I doing it? And does it really matter that we run a business or we create services or goods that add value to them in that environment, not just revenue? And beyond that, what do we do for the broader society? How is what we do relevant to the real world outside of our microcosm of us and our businesses? Integrity, very simply put, is about you, family, your big why of why this is necessary, why you do it. And most importantly, what purpose does it serve in the real world? How does it add value and improve people's lives? Because as a business, you're either selling a product or goods to actually serve a purpose for others, not for yourself, but for them first. And that's how you create long-term sustainable value. In terms of business planning and funding, yes, we've got to look at purposes, be dynamic with it, be nimble and agile, look long-term and work on planning and funding, but it's got to be a dynamic, evolving process. It's not sitting down for 6 months to write this plan and then get stuck into a strategy of how you're going to implement, but just start, innovate and implement, because perceptions of businesses have changed. And I think that's critical from the education world looking out, but also when we reflect on the education world. Everything, in my view, whether we're educators, doctors, lawyers, accountants, hospitals, or fast food, everything's a commodity. You're selling a service or a product for a fee or a unit of time or both. And we've got to ask ourselves as we reflect on this, what is our differentiator? What makes us different as business leaders? What makes our offering as a business organization different from the other? Because at some point, it boils down to a unit. Ask an accountant. They don't care how important we believe we are or somebody believes they are. It boils down to a unit transaction on a balance sheet eventually. In terms of growing, again, who are you surrounded by? Who are you influenced by on a daily basis? Who are you wanting to learn from, and how much do you invest in learning from others and learning from your community, your market, your friends and family? And who has walked this journey before you? Who's been down the road that you can learn from, and who can share experiences with you? Because the reality is, as much as we want to learn, as much as what we want to postulate and theorize, who can share how it's actually done on the ground every day in the real world? The second one is on innovation. And to me, innovation, again, is not just about what technology is doing, how technology is doing it, but it's an internal journey, firstly, between you and yourself. Is technology going to actually improve what you do as a business? Is it going to improve lives? And is it going to improve efficiency on how we do things as a business? Then we go to ask, after we've internalized it individually and as an organization, that do we need to innovate for innovation's sake because it sounds cool, because we've got these revolution topics and 4IR and 5IR and all these IRs, but is it relevant to us? Do we need to use innovation? And if we're using innovation, how is it relevant to what we do as a business? And most importantly, again, how does it create value for those that we serve as an organization? Then look at solutions, then look at platforms. Because if the internal mind shift and the technology innovation doesn't happen internally as an individual and as an organization, the solutions are not going to be relevant. Because if you don't understand their purpose, there's enough platforms, but they won't really be relevant to what you want to do. Again, success is not about doing different things. It's about seeing and doing things differently. In terms of the art of innovation, on a quick summary of my good colleague Guy Kawasaki, he said, talking very much to some of the message I have, is make meaning, not money. Make a mantra, not a mission. Jump to the next curve. That means always be iterating and looking what else is happening, where the changes and what's going on. And in terms of roll the dice, take a chance. You don't know if it will succeed, but if you don't start, you're not going to get anywhere. If you believe you failed in your first action, it's your first action in learning. Get up, take the experience, move on. Don't worry, be crappy. This talks to minimum viable product. Don't try to perfect the product. Just get it out. The market will tell you if it's relevant or not. And then learn from that, innovate and iterate. Every product's been the same, whether it's buying something from automotive to buying a product in a store to what Facebook looked like when it originally started. Innovate, but start and start now. Let 100 flowers bloom. In my view, that's about creating value in your organization. How do you filter that into everyone in what you're doing? In terms of polarizing people, my understanding is when you polarize, it's about don't leave people indifferent in terms of what you do as an organization or business. Let them have a view. They either like it or they don't. But if you have not impacted their perspective, they won't remember you at all. And churn, baby, churn talks to keep innovating, keep iterating and do things different. And in terms of niche thyself, be good at something. Don't be a generalist. Be really good. Be an expert in your field. Build your expertise in that. Then you can follow the next curves and do other things, but be really good. And in terms of don't let bozos grind you down, there are a lot of naysayers. There are a lot of people saying, don't do it, it won't work. But they sit on the sidelines, they theorize, they postulate, they make it an academic discussion. They're not on the field. They're not playing the game. Let them play with you, and then we can talk innovation. And in terms of if we reflect on education and its relevance right now, of what we're doing for the 4IR in business, certification and graduation does not mean education. You can have all the paperwork, you can have passed all the degrees, have you really tested what you've learned? Have you really tested what you've been taught in theory in the real world? Because that is what's the true test. Again, solutions are not found in formal education, but in implementing and challenging the status quo. In terms of diversity, we're not talking just gender diversity only, we're not talking racial diversity, but diversity of the market. Anyone and everyone can give you feedback. How often are you looking at engagement, looking at customer engagements? How often are you talking to your clients, potential clients, and people who are not your clients to understand what are their needs and wants? Because people do business with people. They don't do business with products and services. They buy products and services to serve a purpose, to solve a problem, but they do business with people. They find solutions with people. And finally, in terms of the third I, we're talking about impact and relevance. What are you doing as a business to impact the social and sustainable needs of the world? Because if the reality is we can talk technology, we can talk innovation. If we're not talking to one of the key goals that the United Nations has commonly called the 17 goals of sustainable development, then you're not relevant to being good business, for being a business, for a purposeful business and relevant to what the world needs. We need to focus on how can we make people's lives better? And whether it's reducing poverty or reducing hunger by creating opportunity in your own business and organization for your staff and their family, and then the broader communities, or as looking at a macro system of how do we do business as a platform to change perspectives whilst we provide a service. In terms of governance, how do we run our businesses? Is there an independent oversight? Is there insight and perspective of saying, we're not just here for the bottom line. We're not just here for profiteering. Like BlackRock and some of the biggest investors in the world have said, if you don't have a green focus on your ESG, your environmental, social, and governance, then you're not really focusing on your relevance as a good corporate citizen. You need to look at how do you make money as a business, but how is that money you derive and your service and value you create relevant to the rest of the world that's really struggling? And COVID has clearly demonstrated the inequalities that we have in South Africa, Africa, and the world. Impact and business must be good for community. It must create value. And as Professor Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum has said, it must be about stakeholder capitalism. That's not shareholders, that's stakeholders. Anyone that's affected and affected by what you do has an input in what you do. Their capitalism and their value is an input in what you do as an organization, because you need to align with their needs and larger society, and then look at alignment with other businesses and what we're doing to be impactful and relevant. You can align with larger corporates. Don't just talk ESG. Don't just talk relevance and impact and sustainability because it's really good in an annual report, whether you're a small business or a medium to larger enterprise, but focus on real relevance. And in summary, this is how I judge what I do in an everyday, and I hope you do too. What will my kids remember about what I do and why I do it? My kids are young, but again, what is the relevance? What is the relevance of what we do as businesses, organizations, and institutions to making lives better every day? I thank you.
Thank you so much, Terence. Really appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, and Terence is available with Verona and Leone now for your comments. You're more than welcome to post any comments in the comment section here on the YouTube channel that we're broadcasting from. We are live, so we'll do our best to answer your questions as we progress. Now, you've heard about the 3 I's, integrity and innovation and impact. It's all very important and it's all good and well. It's a wonderful presentation. It's all part of the work that we see Telit SA is getting aligned with. And Verona, if I can start with you, this is the sort of topic and the sort of things that you within Telit SA provide study supervision in. This is what you help businesses with. I'm always concerned about that first step, you know, getting beyond, yes, I'm thinking of it, I know it all makes sense, so my business can benefit from this, but now I, as the business owner, need to empower myself with some of this knowledge and the post-knowledge era that we find ourselves in. What would your advice be with regard to that first step? What should a business owner do now? Now they've listened to you and the other two. What's that first step that they need to take?
Uh, I think that first step is actually, look at your business holistically and look at strategically how you see your business in the future and how you will go about that. Because it's great to have a lot of these wonderful things, Terence, but I think, when we start, we have to think big and have the big picture in place first. And once you have a plan or strategic drive to where you position yourself, how you see yourself, and as Terence say, the three eyes, those three eyes you incorporate in the action steps once you have a strategic focus. And once you know what you need to do, you will get the tools, as any mechanic or a person that wants to build something, you gather these tools together to make your, it marketable, to grow. And also, as Terence say, why do I do what I do? You have to, and also in terms of growth, and I think for any businesses, you have to grow, and not just grow in terms of monetary value, but I think grow in terms of how you also address these sustainable development goals, in terms of the broader society. And what we try to do is actually, not those aspects together, and take the different, fruits in the basket and bring it together and try to actually merge those things together. And that's why there's a close synergy between the work that Leonie does, the work that Terence does, in the broader business environment, and how we as a research unit does not just focus on theory, but actually bringing the praxis, to the space, to the business space, and to the community out there, and responding to the needs of the society. Thank you.
Verona, thank you. And Terence, listening to Verona and keeping in mind what you said, I get the idea we're thinking too small. I don't know if I'm just being inspired now or what, but it feels as if we get too stuck into our everyday lives, and we're missing some of the bigger picture.
I agree, GP. One of the biggest things for me, and I'll share a quick anecdote with it, is I actually got involved full-time in the platform or healthcare business as a system across the country, because I had reported in my previous career to a colonel who, every time I took a new suggestion of how to improve things in the healthcare system, he would sit back and say, Terence, it's not your job to change the system. Just leave it alone. It works. And one day he eventually said, if you think you know better, go do it. And I resigned 30 days later. We met 10 years eventually in Parliament and other environments, where he said, so how are things going? I said, well, you're still employed by the state. We serve the state in a range of businesses across the country with work linking to the continent. And that's about being relevant. You've got to have courage. It may not work the first time. I've been involved in no less than 10 to 15 different business initiatives. But what you take from it is build relationships, build networks, try and understand what the market needs, and iterate as you go along. But most importantly, just get started. You learn along the way. You can theorize as much as you want. You can learn along the way from case studies and experience and coaching and support. But if you never really get down to doing it, it's almost like trying to say you're building muscle, reading magazines on gymming. Just start training, start doing it, and you'll figure it along the way. You will make mistakes, like you do have a painful morning after you've done too many sit-ups on one given day. But get started, learn the lessons, but keep moving. That momentum and that courage to start is where success actually begins.
Leonie, thank you, Terence. Leonie, Terence made me think now when he said, he asked a few questions and made a few proposals to the colonel. I'm immediately going to women in entrepreneurship and women entrepreneurs, and I'm getting that same vibe there. There are a few people having to challenge the system in that environment, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We've been working with female entrepreneurs. So I've been working with them in different capacities, and when I was running an incubator, and with the Enterprising Women program that we've been running, I think, for 9 years. You constantly have women that just want to keep doing the same thing, be the Me Too kind of organization, Me Too kind of services. And we constantly have to say to them, you have to think broader than that, bigger than that. If you're going to get a footprint on the market, you have to find that gap. You have to find what is your unique selling proposition. What are you bringing that nobody else is bringing? As Terence said, you don't necessarily do different things, because people think, if I can't offer something different, then what am I supposed to do? Just do it differently. Don't do it the same way as the person next to you is doing it. There are many different ways to skin a cat, if we want to use that analogy. Just, and as Terence said, just go for it and do it differently. And if you fail, failure is it's not a bad thing. It's school fees. That's how you learn to do things differently next time. And every single time, and I'm pretty sure, people like Terence and many of my colleagues and so on, we've had businesses that, hey, it didn't quite go the way we anticipated, but next time you know better, because we learned our lesson from that, and we've walked away and we've taken something from the scenario. So yeah, it is always about, trying to encourage people to think wider. And again, as Terence said, be courageous. Just take the bull by the horn and say, I'm going to do it. If it doesn't work out, so what?
Terence, on being courageous, what I also see is there's a bit of a fear factor, a hesitancy when it comes to new technology. Many people it's so new that they actually think, all right, no, I know it's supposed to be there, but I'm not going to deal with it now. And I don't know how to get that acceptance going in people. How do we get them to move beyond the fear of new technology?
And so from my perspective, and I'm sure Terence and Verona might have a slightly different viewpoint. So from my perspective, it is always a little bit like when you're eating an elephant, it's one small bite at a time. We are not suddenly going to take, let's say, a female business owner or a aspirant entrepreneur or a small business owner that is, having a service or a limited product offering, and introduce massive technology like AI or whatever the case might be, and think they're now just going to run with that. Very often it is small steps, but again, take the step, see where it goes, give yourself the time to try it out, give yourself the permission to say, I failed at this, but hey, there are many people that know how to do this, and the internet is a wonderful thing. You can get lots of resources and information and so on, and there are many people like us that want to assist, that want to help people, to encourage them to consider new technologies, and to consider, how can technology change my business? How can it make it different to what it currently is, and how can it make it different to the guy next to me?
Thank you, Leonie. Terence, do you agree?
I agree a lot with Leonie, GP. And to add to that, I think what's important is, as much as there's a fear factor, and I'm busy advising a current business in the automotive space, the original solution that they were looking at is, how do we make accounting easier? And they looked at QuickBooks and other platforms, and these solutions are there. They solve the problem. But then I had proposed to them platforms like Zoho, which are enterprise CRM-centric systems that happen to have accounting and everything else built into that. And they had pushed back and said, but all we want to do is track what we make and invoice the client and know where the money went. And I said, but the lifeblood of the business is your customer relationship, your data, of understanding who your client is, where he is, what his needs are, what he buys, how often he bought, how much he spent with you, how do you contact him, be in touch, engage. And that to me is understanding that technology is an enabler to creating these relationships. You can keep it in a little black book and phone them whenever you remember to do so, or put it on a WhatsApp list, which you can do anyway. but being able to understand the data of the client, understand the client of the data of the consumer, is solving not just a current problem, but long-term. Being able to understand what is available in the data and finding the trends that you may not necessarily see. In terms of the courageous approach, very much so, like you have amazing programs that we're developing in Telet and NWU, but you also have shorter, very short, less, if I would call it, intimidating programs you'd find on YouTube, because literally every minute 500 hours of content is being uploaded to YouTube. So there's always a how to and how to understand how things work and why it's being done. So it's less intimidating. But if you want a sort of more formalized approach, there's platforms like Coursera and edX that offer dedicated short courses on saying, how do I use this and why do I use it, from formalized institutions? Irrelevant of where you get the exposure, it's being able to understand that technology must make your life easier, not make you more frustrated. Because if it does not make your life easier, then you've missed what I spoke about, the internal journey with technology and innovation. Understand what you're trying to improve, how it adds value to what you do, and as an end, as an outcome, how does it make a difference to your clients and the value that you create for them?
Thank you, Terence. Verona, your perspectives on this? I think more from a training environment as well. I think some people might be watching this and thinking, oh yes, perhaps not, if not for myself, then I know someone in my business, that I can task with this.
Yes, GP, I think what COVID, brought about is that paradigm or the changing shift that people had to make from, in the face-to-face environment to just embracing the technology. And there I come again to say, the fusion of man and technology, actually using the technology as best to actually expand your businesses. Also the trends, as Terence said, knowing who your customers are, but being able to do that in a digital space, you must know where to look and what are the tools, the basic fundamental tools that you can actually use to actually do your e-business. And that is the space that we are moving in. And I think we are also really, pro open education resources. So there's a big focus in the work that we do is actually using open education resources, as Terence says, micro-credentials and, equipping those basic skills. But it's very important is just to start. And I think with COVID coming into our world, it actually allowed people to actually move forward, because there was a lot of resistance in the educational space, in businesses. It's okay, we've been doing this for many years, but now we realize we need to shift, we need to make change, we need to adapt. There's a saying, adopt or die, in the technology world, we say adopt or die. And if businesses are not going to start using those basic functions, monitoring the trends, the buying trends, and that is what we're trying to do with our SLP, is actually providing that sound base, that digital ecosystem, for businesses to actually monitor their social media, the trends, how they look at the data that is available for them to actually monitor their consumer trends and sales. Yes,
Thank you, Verona. Verona, I'll come back to you at the end. We have to say goodbye. I'll come back to you asking a few questions about you being at the Van der Bijlpark campus of the NWU and your footprint and so on. So I'll come back to you in a while. Let me first say goodbye to Leonie. Leonie, a last word from you. I'm curious as to your view on business in South Africa. Is there reason for optimism? Can we look towards the future and see something positive in South Africa?
Absolutely. That's my short answer. Absolutely. There is a lot of opportunities. There are new things on the horizon. If only we are open to exploring them and to really digging deep into technology specifically. There are wonderful things that can be done. And for me particularly, I believe that, things like the health industry and education, like telemedicine and online education and so on, is a way forward. And these are things that we really struggle with in South Africa. We have to pivot, as I said earlier on, so businesses cannot keep doing things the way that they have been doing them. They have to adopt technology. And as Verona said, adopt or die. If we don't adopt technology, we're going to leave not only larger businesses behind, but smaller businesses. And here, we really want to urge our governments and industry role players is, we need to have the technical infrastructure for people to get access to technology. Otherwise, we are, as South Africa, we're going to be left behind with the fourth and the fifth industrial revolution. But there's a lot of scope, there's a lot of opportunities, and I personally believe it's an incredibly exciting time. And if we look back in 10 years or so, we'll probably say, what was that old-fashioned world that we used to live in?
Thank you, Leonie, and thank you for your participation. Terence, I assume that part of this adaptation mindset would resonate not only on various industries and showing an interest in various industries, but also an interest in moving forward, whether it be with the help of technology or just the mindset, but there's a moving forward element that we need in this country.
100% GP. I think what's the only constant that we have in this world and in this life is actually change. And we need to adapt, adjust, accommodate, and move on. Because as a country, we live in what is called the impossibility. Nobody thought that by 94 we'd be living in the country that we do, with the diversity, the resources, and the opportunities that we have. COVID has exposed significant inequalities in this country, the continent, and the world. Now's the time for you to pursue that dream, pursue that project, pursue that idea, because the world needs what you bring to it, and the world will appreciate the improvement and the innovation you bring.
Thank you so much, Terence, and thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Verona, you can take us home now. Telet SA is on the Van der Bijl Park campus, but I think we're not restricted by the geographical location, are we?
No, we're definitely not restricted by the geographical location. We are a multidisciplinary unit, and I think maybe one of the units and the people in the units that are so diverse in terms of expertise and skills. And I think that is also the future, and how we are moving forward. Faculties, businesses, anything cannot function in silos anymore. We have to have multidisciplinary teams with people with expertise, diverse expertise, actually to bring a product, to the table. And with Telet SA, we got members across the three campuses, the NWU campuses. We have got members that can provide supervision from entrepreneurship, from augmented reality for businesses, from eye tracking, wearable devices. We work in anything that enhances the experience of businesses, people in terms of technology. I can also share that we are in the process to actually become an African partner for a global project with the University of Aalto in Helsinki, Finland, and Turku, where we are going to be a multidisciplinary team. Terence will be from the health consultancy aspect, where they're going to develop a glove, a ER glove, a wearable glove, and we will have a strong entrepreneurial leg to that, a development leg. So this is really an initiative, a multidisciplinary team initiative. So, we as a unit, as members in the units, really realize that we have to be a team of different skills, different knowledge, and this is the future. silos and working in silos and just a research unit that's not aligned with what happens in the broader space and in practice will not survive the space and the future. And that is all from my side. And when in future also, we will keep on being sustainable. And I think for a unit to survive, we must be sustainable. We must address the demands of the broader society and the developmental goals and sustainable goals, as Terence displayed just now. Thank you, Reshaping.
Thank you, Verona. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. That's it from Tell It SA. As you can see, we like talking about these topics within our field. If you want to know more, if you'd like to engage with Tell It SA, you're more than welcome to go and have a look at their website. Just go to the university's website, www.nwu-pukke.ac.za. Go to the Faculty of Economic and Management Sciences, and there you'll find Tell It SA. Thank you for joining us. See you soon.